in living color from the Radio What Studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? Where do I send you? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say it one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. The people need to be entertained. Make your next thing a big one. Let's see. Oh, this week's shows. I'll be at the Rab on Friday night. It's my usual Friday night gig. Very excited to be back there. And, it's been going reasonably well on Friday nights. Yes, we're remaining vigilant during this quarantine time. Wear a mask on the way in. But they do have a full bar. The kitchen is open. Pool tables on a Friday night. And there's always something to do while you're waiting to sing on stage. Yes, I said karaoke. You're the stars of the show at the Rab. Friday night, 8 p.m. until 1 in the a.m. It's not bad. It's a good time. Yeah. Come on out and play with us. Let's see. Also, if you want to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, September 5th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, multiple outlets confirm Trump called dead captured U.S. troops losers. President Trump denied reporting from The Atlantic that he repeatedly called U.S. military personnel captured or killed in battle, quote, losers, end quote, and, quote, suckers, end quote. But multiple outlets corroborated the report on Friday, including Fox News. The Associated Press and the Washington Post confirmed the comments, saying Trump begged out of a trip to pay respects to U.S. World War I dead at East Marne American Cemetery outside Paris because, quote, it's filled with losers, end quote, and, quote, suckers, end quote. Fox News' Jennifer Griffin reports that while planning a July 4th military parade, Trump was opposed to including, quote, wounded guys, end quote, saying, quote, that's not a good look, end quote, and, quote, Americans don't like that, end quote. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany claimed the reporting had been, quote, debunked, end quote, saying it was, quote, based on four cowardly anonymous sources who probably do not even exist, end quote. This is according to Fox News. Number 2, Biden passionately condemns Trump's reported comments about troops. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden strongly rebuked President Trump on Friday and called for him to apologize for, quote, disgusting, end quote, remarks he allegedly made about U.S. troops, referring to reports that Trump described U.S. troops killed in battle as, quote, losers, end quote, and, quote, suckers, end quote. Biden called the reported comments, quote, deplorable, end quote. Biden's late son, Beau Biden, served in Iraq. Quote, when my son volunteered and joined the United States military as the Attorney General and went to Iraq for a year, won the Bronze Star and other commendations, he wasn't a sucker, end quote. Biden said, quote, the servicemen and women he served with, particularly those who did not come home, were not losers, end quote. He added, quote, I'm always cautioned not to lose my temper. This may be as close as I've come in this campaign, end quote. This is according to Axios. Number 3, coronavirus vaccine developers to jointly pledge adherence to safety. In a draft of joint In a draft of a joint statement, several major drug makers, including Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna, pledged not to seek government approval for their COVID-19 vaccines, many of which are already in large clinical trials, until they have been proven safe and effective, the Wall Street Journal reports. The statement is still being finalized, but could reportedly be made public as soon as next week. The journal notes the pledge is, quote, an unusual joint move among rivals, end quote, which comes amid concerns that the companies and the U.S. government may be rushing to approve a vaccine. Quote, we believe this pledge will help ensure public confidence in the COVID-19 vaccines that may ultimately be approved and adherence in the rigorous scientific and regulatory process by which they are evaluated, end quote, the draft statement says. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Number 4, White House memo instructs federal agencies to nix racial sensitivity trainings. In a letter sent to executive branch agencies Friday, White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought said President Trump has directed him to, quote, ensure that federal agencies cease and desist from using taxpayer dollars to fund, end quote, racial sensitivity training sessions, which he described as, quote, divisive, end quote, and, quote, un-American, end quote. The OMB is instructing agencies to identify all contracts, quote, related to any training on critical race theory, white privilege, or any other training or propaganda effort that teaches or suggests, end quote, the United States is, quote, an inherently racist or evil country, end quote, or that, quote, any race or ethnicity is inherently racist or evil, end quote. Once those contracts are identified, the letter says the agency should work within the confines of the law to cancel them. The letter comes after months of protests against racial injustice in the U.S. This is according to the Washington Post and the Associated Press. Number 5, U.S. COVID-19 death toll could rise to 410,000 by January, model projects. The University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation this week forecast that by January 1st, the COVID-19 death toll in the U.S. will rise to 410,451. That would be about 225,000 more COVID-19 deaths. The IHME says it expects the daily COVID-19 death rate in the U.S. to rise to nearly 3,000 a day in December, citing, quote, seasonality and declining vigilance of the public, end quote. The researchers pointed to face masks as a key way to lower the death toll, but noted masks use has declined in recent weeks. Additionally, the IHME says that if a, quote, herd immunity strategy, end quote, were pursued and, quote, no further government intervention is taken from now to January, end quote, the COVID-19 death toll could increase to 620,000. This is according to CNN. Number 6, Trump says Stars and Stripes won't lose funding. President Trump on Friday said that funding for Stars and Stripes, the United States military newspaper, would not be cut under Defense Department budget plans. The paper would cease both print and online publication by September 30th, but Trump will seemingly reverse that. Stars and Stripes, quote, will continue to be a wonderful source of information to our great military, end quote, Trump tweeted. A senior administration official confirmed to the New York Times that Trump decided to back Stars and Stripes after aides showed him news reports blaming him for shuttering the publication. The president's announcement comes after multiple reports that he insulted American service members who were killed in the country's wars. Trump has denied those reports. This is according to the New York Times and President Trump. Number 7, unemployment rate declines to 8.4% in August. The U.S. unemployment rate declined to 8.4% in August as the economy added 1.4 million jobs, the Labor Department said on Friday. The unemployment rate was down from 10.2% in July. And this was the first time it had been below 10% since the coronavirus began in the United States. Economists were anticipating the unemployment rate would decline to 9.8%. Hiring, however, has slowed after the economy previously added 1.7 million jobs in July and 4.8 million jobs in June. About 238,000 of the jobs added in August were temporary census workers. Of the 22 million jobs lost in the U.S. amid the COVID-19 pandemic, about half have been recovered. This is according to the Washington Post and the Associated Press. Number 8, U.S. brokered deal between Balkan rivals seen as diplomatic victory for Israel. The White House on Friday brokered an agreement normalizing economic relations between Serbia and Kosovo, 2 decades after the two sides fought a war. But the negotiations were heavily tied to Israel as well. In the deal, Serbia became the first European country to transfer its embassy to Jerusalem, while the Muslim-majority Kosovo will recognize Israel. In exchange, Israel will recognize Kosovo, which declared independence in 2008, but is still seeking to further legitimize its statehood. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Kosovo will also open its embassy in Jerusalem, making it the first Muslim-majority country to do so. The move is viewed as the latest effort by the Trump administration to bolster Israel's international ties. Recently, the White House helped Israel and the United Arab Emirates normalize relations. This is according to Agence France Presse and the Associated Press. Number 9, Mississippi prosecutors drop charges against Curtis Flowers. Mississippi prosecutors on Friday dropped their case against Curtis Flowers, a black man from Mississippi who had been tried an unprecedented 6 separate times for a 1996 murder. Flowers has spent 23 years in prison, many of them on death row. Flowers, whose case vaulted into the public consciousness through the American public media podcast In the Dark, was released from prison on bail last year after the U.S. Supreme Court reversed his latest conviction. Now there will be no 7th trial. Quote, "Today I am finally free from the injustice that left me locked in a box for nearly 23 years, end quote, Flowers said in a statement released by his attorneys. The prosecution has received criticism over the years, largely stemming from allegations of racial discrimination in jury selection. This is according to the American Public Media and NBC News. Number 10, Mulan and Tenet to test future of pandemic debuts this weekend. 2 major moves that were repeatedly delayed due to COVID-19 pandemic have both made their debuts in the United States on a key weekend for the entertainment industry. Tenet, the first major blockbuster film to be released during the pandemic, debuted in the U.S. on Thursday in the 75% of movie theaters that have reopened, though it's unclear how willing American audiences will be to return. Mulan, meanwhile, debuted on Disney Plus on Friday for $30, after Disney skipped a U.S. theatrical release due to the pandemic. Experts have their eye on how each film performs, which could determine whether movies scheduled for the coming months are either released in the theaters, released at home, or delayed until 2021. This is according to the Associated Press and Variety. That's 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, September 5th, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for putting up with my stumbling. I appreciate that so much. I'm trying to get smarter, and while I'm at it, maybe you'll get smarter with me. But if this is the only source of news that you have in your life, I encourage you to go to the sources that I have footnoted under each little news item. Yeah, make sure you check my sources, because I'm a moron. I'm just trying to get smarter. This has been What Makes You Smarter. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous, Find it everywhere using the hashtag #WhatMakesYouFamous. Now, that podcast has been pretty cool. I've been able to talk to quite a few people on it, and my goodness, the stories that people tell. Everyone has a story. You have a story. Yeah, what makes you famous? Hashtag #WhatMakesYouFamous. Also, KeysDAN Gaming. Find me everywhere using the hashtag KeysDAN Gaming. It's just something new. More content for my feed, more of that sweet, sweet tent. I'm playing Marvel's Avengers most recently. I tried it late last night in the wee hours of the morning after I left the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. I did my karaoke show, and then I was still jazzed, because after a show, I get jazzed. So I was up for quite a bit of the night, and I think I was greeted by the sunrise this morning, still playing Marvel's Avengers. I'm trying to get into that game. All right. That's it for me. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace.